Security threats are growing every day, and protecting the crown jewels of an organization is a challenge. Historically, we have protected the perimeter. More recently, we have been digging deeper into the environment, adding layers of defense, but storage has always been difficult to secure. Today, we're talking to a company that helps solve this challenge, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is Chris Brandt here with Sandesh Patel. Welcome to another FUTR podcast. If you get a second, click on that subscribe button because that's awesome sauce and that helps the channel a ton. Today we're talking with Racktop Systems CEO Eric Bednash. Racktop has a cyber storage system that they say can stop a ransomware attack in less than a second. This is storage designed explicitly around security, and they have attracted a lot of security-conscious organizations and those three-letter agencies that have a vested interest in aggressively protecting their data. This is storage that goes well beyond just encrypted drives. So let's talk with Eric to find out what cyber storage is and how it works. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thanks for coming on. This is an interesting new area, because I think we've gone through a lot of years of talking about, we got to get encrypted disks. We got to get encrypted disks. And people are like, do we have to really get encrypted disks? And it's like, well, if you want to be compliant, yes. Yeah. But that only solves for a very small subset of security problems that are related to storage, right? You guys are really taking a much bigger approach to securing unstructured data in particular. But before we get there, can you tell me a little bit about what Racktop is and what your story is?
I spent probably the majority of my career at this point in national intelligence. So really working in environments that required an incredible amount of security, and I think more than that, just really forced you to think differently about what you were doing, and for me in particular, it sort of forced me to look at security from the data's perspective. And that's sort of the perspective that we took here at Racktop when we built the company and sort of brought a product to market. Instead of looking at cybersecurity from the outside in, which is sort of how that market was formed, right? So you look at, the internet and kind of inward. We looked at it from the data's perspective because at the end of the day, right, the bad guys are stealing the data. They're not stealing the network. And we wanted to sort of take a different approach. And so, our background and experience and sort of, working in environments that were very unique and interesting and posed interesting challenges, really gave us this perspective and allowed us to sort of do what we do today. And as you already mentioned, be able to stop a ransomware attack in less than a second.
You saw a problem with the storage market. I mean, what could you get into a little bit about what was that? What were you seeing that people were struggling with?
The storage market kind of grew up parallel to cyber, right? If you think about it like unstructured data, unstructured files, like 90s, right? So that's kind of when things start to take off, and that market starts to develop. But that's around the same time. Look at the cyber market, right? Where everybody's connecting to the internet, and so these things kind of grew up in parallel, but they grew up separate, right? Storage has always been thought of to be like in the inner core of the network. It's protected. There's no bad guys in there, and right. And it's sort of, that's where it sits. And we've, traditionally the storage market's been focused on performance, capacity, and price. And, it honestly, in the last few years has really become something that's more commoditized. The problem is that all of these advanced attacks, the things you see about in the news, the things you read about, attack those file shares. They hold 80 to 90% of any data that's in enterprise. They're going after those systems. So all of these sort of big unstructured data systems that our enterprises have implemented in the last 25, 30 years are very unprotected and unable to actually defend themselves from the threats that are out there today. And so when we looked at the best place to protect data, based on our experience of the last 20 years, we knew that the best place to protect primary data was to put the protections as close to the data as possible. And so that kind of led us to the unstructured file system, or in our case, it's almost like a network detached storage. That enabled us to, sort of informed us to use that as the delivery mechanism for our form of data security.
And I totally agree with you that storage and cybersecurity kind of evolved in parallel? Because I just remember, we were locking everything down, but storage is fine. It was total afterthought, because people don't get at storage. They don't understand it. Hackers aren't going to touch storage. But who is your market for this? I mean, what kind of companies are really looking for these types of solutions?
Anybody today, right? I mean, look at ransomware. Ransomware, I think, is the thing that sort of took this from being what I'll call a small number of hyper security sensitive organizations or markets who had maybe different regulatory compliance requirements. I talked about encryption, which I think is a very basic, sort of fundamental element, but it's not sort of the security we need today. It's a foundational element, but it is not, the thing that you need to do. Ransomware has created this sort of awareness that hasn't really been there before. So you kind of had certain markets that were more in tune and had maybe different compliance requirements before. But in the last few years, ransomware became that thing that made it really visible for everybody, right? It impacted everybody. And so, in terms of the most impacted, I think are the ones who are searching for solutions more rapidly. But really, it's cross-cutting. You look at anything from energy. I mean, we had attacks across all industries, state and local governments, energy, education, healthcare. Huge, right? Obviously, governments, federal governments. And so really, unless your data is of zero importance, either to be stolen or destroyed, then, that's our market, right? We're there to protect primary data.
It's interesting when you talk about ransomware. One of the evolution that we've seen in ransomware is that, initially they were just attacking a system and they'd lock it down and all that. But ransomware attacks have gotten very sophisticated lately. Certainly we've got nation state actors in there, and especially right now. And what we've seen is that they lock down entire data centers, not just individual systems. And if you're going to lock down an entire data center, the best place to do that is at the storage.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've sort of engineered our architectures to use centralized shared resources, right? So whether it be a VMware sort of virtualized infrastructure or even enterprise apps, right? There are so many enterprise applications out there that are using big unstructured data repositories as a critical element to what they're doing, right? You're not going to stick huge imagery into a database, right? You're going to use a database for indexing and you're going to put the imagery on a file share, right? And so if you think about medical imagery, you think about, geospatial companies, really anybody, any industry you kind of map to this profile, finance, oil and gas, right? They're taking pictures of geography and maps and they have all this stuff. And, that's not going in a structured, resource. It's going in unstructured resources.
Cyberstorage is kind of a little bit of a new term. We hear, that cyber gets attached to just about everything these days.
Yeah.
But what differentiates cyberstorage?
Cyberstorage is really about active protections for primary data, right? So we're not talking about do I have an immutable snapshot so I can recover? Look, there are three phases to sort of the life cycle, right? So you have before an attack, which you really care about minimizing that threat window, right? You want to minimize the number of attack vectors you have. That really is a compliance thing, right? You want to make sure that you have great cyber hygiene, and it plays into a compliance sort of role. The second is during an attack, right? You want to know that you're being attacked, and you want to be able to respond as quickly as possible. Now, the current threat window is like 7 to 9 months. So there's a lot of data that you can steal in 7 to 9 months.
Yes.
But, and so you want to actually detect and stop that quickly. And then the third is remediation and recovery. And this is where I think a lot of clever marketers have started to latch on and say, oh, we're cyber whatever. We can restore your data from a snapshot. And that's just one element of what we're talking about here. And so cyber storage really is the unification of those things. For us, it's the unification of those three components of the lifecycle, which really map perfectly to the 5 functional areas of the NIST cybersecurity framework. So you have before, during, and after an attack. You're always in one of these states. You're never not in one of these states. And it's really addressing that full continuum. Because if you only deal with a part of it, then you have a gap, right? You either have, if you're only saying, well, I have great backups, and that's how I'm going to solve my cyber problem. Well, you have 7 to 9 months of data exfiltration opportunity. So how are you going to recover when someone's stolen your data for the last 7 months? There's no recovery from that, right? So, and you want to make sure that your systems are as locked down and protected as possible. And you want to be able to have great hygiene and policies. And you want to make sure that what you set today is set tomorrow. So all of these things play together. That's what Cyberstorage is for Racktop. It's addressing that entire data continuum before, during, and after an attack.
Obviously, this is network attached storage, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with unstructured data. What are the components that go into it? How does it all work?
The beauty, I think, in what we do is that it looks and feels like a traditional NAS. So if you think about, so we'll sort of pivot for 1 second and talk about sort of cyber products. Cyber products can be very hard to implement, right? They either require agents, they require complex skill sets. There's a lot that goes into implementing cyber software, right? And so if I were to come to you and say, I have this great cyber product that can stop ransomware in under a second, and by the way, you just have to put an agent on 5,000 systems and, it's super easy. And like, okay, the security folks already have enough to handle. That's crazy, right? And so that's kind of like the complexity with dealing with a traditional cyber solution. Now, if you pivot to NAS, and why we chose that as the I'll call the delivery platform for what we do, we can drop into any environment, talk NFS or SMB, which every environment talks today, and we can protect that data without any agents because we're sitting in the data plane, right? As clients are accessing data, we're assessing their behaviors and then making the determination whether or not that activity is malicious. So whether they're trying to steal data, or whether they're trying to encrypt data, like a sabotage or ransomware, and we're doing that all transparently in real time. And so we can do that. We don't have to do anything to endpoints. We know when you're accessing data locally versus remotely. We know when you're on the VPN. We know all of that. We know when you're an application. We know when you're a user. And so it allows us to really drop into any traditional enterprise and protect data today. And that's why we chose that platform. And like I said, I think it's one of the sort of more, deployment is hard, right? You talk about, I have the most elegant solution, but it takes a month and an army to deploy it. And so with us, it's 15 minutes and it looks and feels like a NAS. So your storage admin, who you've had for the last 15 years, managing your storage XYZ, they know how to do it.
So I've been selling storage for my entire career. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's my 24-year career there. So it is definite.
He's a one-trick pony.
Yeah. I just can't learn anything else. It's too hard. So what I find fascinating about what you're doing is you're coming into a really big market, but it's a very competitive market. There's a lot of players, right? Like NetApp is obviously the king of NAS, and you got,
of course,
some of these other guys. But like, what's been like your biggest challenge when it comes to kind of starting this kind of company, especially a NAS company, because supporting those protocols is not easy, and getting all the snapshotting and replicate all of those resiliency features and all that stuff, it's not easy. So like, what's been your biggest challenge to kind of build this thing?
The technical elements haven't really been as much of a challenge, and we spend a lot of our time focusing on integrating the security components into the whole operating system and data stack. So we don't want this to sort of be something that's separate, and it is integrated so that it can meet the performance requirements. And I wouldn't say that technical challenges, although Microsoft is a bit of a moving target with SMB, but NFS is pretty stable, which is pretty good. But Microsoft likes to put out new features and stuff like that. But luckily, they also put out protocol compliance tests, so you can just run those and make sure you're okay. But I would say that the biggest challenge is really is end users just understanding the criticality of of their data, and like knowing that there's a solution out there like ours to actually solve this problem. And so, for us, it's like a get the word out sort of thing.
Yeah.
We haven't had so many,
But we can help with
Yeah,
that.
That's the goal today.
That's right. But that's really been it. And it's, I think it's funny because you'll run into folks and we take a very practical approach to this. It's like, look, I honestly, you've sold a lot of NetApp. NetApp is everywhere. It's not my goal to go and take out every NetApp system and everywhere. That's ridiculous. That's not a practical goal for us. But there's probably a percentage of the data within any particular enterprise that requires a level of security that warrants our system, right? So we can play in those environments and we don't have to have everything. Some customers it's more, some customers it's less. And sometimes it's the customer actually understanding what the criticality of their data is. And so we try and help walk them through that. Like, do you back it up? This data is not important, they'll say. Well, do you back it up? Yes. Why do you back it up? Well, because if I lost it, that would be a problem. I'm like, okay. So I think you've answered the question. And then they're like, yeah, okay. Yeah. But it's getting easier and easier, I will say. And just because I think infrastructure and operations professionals are definitely more in tune to security than they were 3-4 years ago. And they're starting to understand the impacts on their part of the organization when there is a cyber attack, right? It's not just the CISO and the network security folks, and they have the problem. It's really the INO folks who bear the brunt of it. And, I think that's becoming clearer. Their customers are starting to understand what are the right questions to ask. And so, we have a solution that's easy for them. And so we just got to tell more people.
Yeah, getting the word out is hard right now, and the pandemic didn't help you, I'm sure, so it's tough. It's tough to get the word out. Yeah.
Like I mentioned in the intro, you guys have, a lot of 3-letter agencies that are, your customer base, and, they're not known for making a lot of recommendations about stuff, right? So, that while it's a great reference, it's a hard reference to use.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
He's well trained. We can't get him to crack, Chris.
That's right. But I will say this, that there are many organizations that use our product in critical infrastructure and critical situations, life and death situations. If you think about healthcare, those are life and death situations. Sure. From a operational perspective, we could meet the requirement that's necessary to operate in that world. And from a security perspective, we add the level of capability that is necessary in sort of our current, operating landscape. I
want to get back to this sort of pretty bold claim that you guys make that you can stop ransomware in under a second. Could you talk about how that happens? Because that's, you don't see that every day. I can tell you that, but let me show you. And so no demo today, but we can prove it. And I think, those of us who have been in the security world know, like, this is a moving target, right? And there's a lot of research and analysis and continued development that goes into sort of maintaining a level of protection. And but if you think about sort of the way, I guess the easy way to describe what it is we're doing, and is that we can assess a lot of data in a very short period of time. Because we're doing it all within an enclosed system, meaning all within the same operating system. So we're operating essentially at RAM speed in terms of how we're making assessments. We operate on, there's no special hardware here. It's a commodity server or a virtual machine. And we have all the processors available. So, we have a lot of resources there, but we're operating in the same context as the data is being served to the clients. And so we're able to make a lot of assessments really fast. And when we can make a lot of assessments really fast, we can make decisions fast and we can stop attacks fast. If you were to do this with an external system, which is, how you would do it in, piecing together like a SIEM and a SOAR, and maybe you have an XDR solution and you're going to feed your F policy configuration, or you're going to configure F policy, feed a bunch of audit logs over. You were to do all that, okay? It could take, who knows how long it could take to assess what's going on, right?
the amount of data we are analyzing, assessing, and making our determination on, is you cannot process that data externally fast enough to actually detect and stop an attack in a reasonable amount of time. So that's why we can do what we can do so quickly, is because we're doing it all as an integrated, integrated source and integrated solution.
When you're dealing with storage, you have a lot of factors that you're trying to consider for. I mean, like you have to have if you write data, you got to guarantee that it got there, right?
Yeah.
And it's accurate. If it's performance dependent, so you can't take a lot of time to, figure all this stuff out and slow things down. I mean, like, how are you working around all these challenges?
We didn't necessarily have to wedge this into something that we had been shipping for 25 years. Mm-hmm. We had the advantage of being able to plug in at any level of the operating system that we wanted to, from the kernel to the protocol servers down to the file system, and do things in parallel. And so when you have the ability to do that, there's a lot of power there in the system. So you can still provide the data guarantees that you need to provide, but also do the security analysis at the same time, right? So, and that's really the secret to being able to do this, is that we can be in the data pipeline without having to block the data pipeline until we need to block the data pipeline for a security reason.
So are you using any specialized hardware for this?
What you deploy on is really dependent on your scale, the scale and the number of concurrent clients, and sort of how you want to use it within your organization. We can deploy in the cloud, in VMs. So, your traditional cloud providers, AWS and Amazon, or AWS and Azure. We can deploy on bare metal. So if you have very large scale, multi-petabyte, we can deploy on bare metal servers, or we can run in hyperconverged. We have hyperconverged deployments, so you just run in a virtualized instance there, or we can run in your VMware infrastructure. So it's really flexible. Now, you're not going to serve out petabytes of data in a virtual machine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but at some point it becomes impractical to do that. But there's a lot of organizations that have multiple sites. They have big data center where maybe they'll deploy hardware, and then they'll have edge sites. Maybe they're served out of data centers, but they're served on hyperconverged. And for us, our goal is, we can match up our software with whatever the hardware architecture is to meet the data requirement. But the reason you're doing this is to protect the data you're putting on our system, right? And so that's really the context and the mindset we want people to get in. It's like, it's the what are we protecting? How are we protecting it? And then we can sort of scale with whatever the data requirements are.
I have to imagine that you've seen some interesting scenarios. Are there any interesting use cases that you can share with us?
I don't know, interesting. I think at this stage we've all
this is kind of a nerdy podcast. So I mean, interesting's relative, right?
we've seen it all. So we have financial organizations and media organizations that are using our product in what I'll call data lifecycle management workflows with added security, right? So being able to, we have a technology. It's a data enablement technology, but it's still, it's sort of, it still works with everything we talked about here today. That allows us to tier data into S3, but we do it securely. So the keys are never up there, which I think is a little aside here. People are like, my data in Amazon is encrypted. The keys are in Amazon too. And okay, I mean, there's ways to get protected, but the point is that, from a data lifecycle management, we can support being able to do that in a secure way that's brain dead secure. Mm-hmm. And then so by using that technology, along with the security technologies, you could actually have a data lifecycle management workflow that maybe has a couple hundred terabytes local, a couple petabytes of cold storage in the cloud, and it's seamless, right? There's no it's in a bucket now. You don't even know. It looks like a file system to you. But that's an interesting sort of use case, because if you think about finance, sort of insurance, they have anybody who has a data retention requirement. It's like store once, read never, and I got to hold it for 7 years. Yeah. Well, that's actually a really good use case. What you don't want to do is store it on some cheap and deep system and then have it get attacked because nobody's watching it.
Yeah.
And what we can do is say, okay, well, we can sort of sit in front of, call the cloud cheap and deep. But we can also tell you when someone's snooping around in there, and you probably want to know. So even though these are old records, those old records have social security numbers, PII. I think that's a really interesting use case. And then you have your traditional application where healthcare, medical imaging, PAC systems, VNA systems. So big, things like that. High performance, multi-level security. Boy, there's a lot of them now that I think about it. Multi-level security, where we're dealing with like different classification levels of data. Mini high performance computing. I say this because it's not. We don't have a high performance computing system, but there are high performance computing like environments that are just using NFS to do multi-computer processing.
Right.
Well, you don't need like a traditional HPC system to do that. You need like a fast, NFS system to do that. And so we could actually fit in that environment, but also provide the layer of encryption, compliance, auditing that's necessary. So think about national labs. That's a big area for us. And so those are kind of some of the common ones other than traditional file shares. I mean, that's a sort of an easy one, but it's not too exciting, but it's common.
Talk a little bit more about that archive piece, because I think, are you stubbing out files so that it all appears as like sort of one unified file system, or how does that work?
I have a project and that project is done, but I can't delete the data. So I could enable our TDM feature on that data and it'll just move it off to my cheapest S3 object store that I have. But when, let's say, an editor needs to access that data, they can just open up the same SMB file share they used last time. It all looks like it's there. And when they click on a file to pull it back, well, you got to pull it back from your S3 object store, but that's the only latency. Like, they don't know any different. There's nothing that's different about it. And that's all happening in the background. So it's use cases like that are really good, where you have data that's worked on and then it needs to be retained, but it's not really active live data. Because if it's active live data, then you don't want the latency of the internet getting in the way. So you just want to keep that stuff local, right? So it's kind of, we noticed that a lot of customers had these workflows and they were buying secondary systems to go ahead and put cheap secondary systems to go put all this data on that just needed to sit around and do nothing. But that in and of itself is like a huge security risk, again, because there's like zero security sophistication over there at all. Probably not even encryption. And so they can get all the same benefits we have to offer, but be able to actually leverage, cheaper technology, cheaper storage, medium technologies, and enable that workflow. And that's it.
That's a challenging problem that a lot of folks are trying to manage too.
And like I said, in industries where you have compliance requirements, you have data that has to be retained for a certain period of time. It's just a really good way. People have contracts in place with some of the object store providers, cloud providers. It's cheap for them to do this. They're not pulling data back. They have no egress fees. It's, that all makes sense in those environments. And it's not only a good security improvement, but it's a great cost benefit for them as well. And even those who have on-prem object stores, so people have invested in on-prem object store solutions. We work with all those too. And so you can still get the sort of economy of scale of those solutions you've implemented, but in a secure way, without ever changing the way that your users, interact with the data.
Tell me what's next for Racktop. Where do you guys go from here?
We're just at the beginning. So we have Cyberstorage from a market perspective is relatively brand new. Gartner sort of identified it on its on their hype cycle in 21. They identified it again in 22, and we're looking at at least a 10-year horizon.
Are we in the plateau of productivity now?
We're not. No, we're at the beginning of the, we're at the, I forget what it's called, but it's at the very beginning, which means we have a lot of, opportunity in front of us. So I think that I'm really excited about where we are today. We've been identified as a leader in this category. Other analyst firms have put us ahead in terms of being able to be, for ransomware protection. Ransomware is obviously very visible today, but I think the things that people aren't quite talking about yet, and we've seen them, if you look in the news, you've seen them, are data extortion attacks, data exfiltration, data theft. You can't recover from a data theft. And I think that this is a really important point when customers are thinking about their cyber strategy when it comes to data. It's, if you're putting a lot of investment in making sure you can recover from a ransomware attack, they're probably stealing your data. So you can recover, great, but they've stolen it all. So, so now what? So I think that the good thing is the bad guys are never going to stop. So that's going to keep us employed for a long time. And we'll just continue to make, we're constantly creating new assessors and doing new research around how to protect these attacks. And so that's sort of what we're focused on. I think there's another interesting element here, which I think people don't necessarily recognize out of the gate. Because again, they're like, oh, I can stop ransomware, I can stop threats, but what they don't think about is the cyber hygiene. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, but one of the most common things we detect with our system is just bad behavior within the environment. And what I mean by that is I have enterprise apps using domain admin credentials to write files to my file share. So if I'm wearing my bad guy suit, oh man, that's so, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to infiltrate that system, grab those credentials, and you're going to think I'm some enterprise app. And really what I'm going to do is just steal all your data. And so I'm going to wreak havoc because I'm going to then use those credentials to jump and escalate and work my way through the system. And so I think these sorts of things, are exciting to me. They really are. They're exciting because I think the infrastructure and operations folks, who don't necessarily haven't been in that security world are starting to see and recognize okay, these threats are big. And so that's why I think we have a sort of a big runway in front of us and a lot of opportunity. And there's a lot of threats happening, and I'm sure next year I could tell you all about the new threats we've prevented because there'll be something else that happens between now and then.
I appreciate your excitement. I'm similarly excited about this stuff, but I'm not sure I'm a good measure of what should be exciting people. But But no, I mean, it sounds very cool. And I think it's interesting that, you guys have been around for a while, longer than what, your publicity would suggest, because you've kind of been working in the shadows with a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
And, you're kind of bursting out into the big stage right now.
Yeah. I would say we're an East Coast company. We sort of came out of, not the company didn't come out of, but our backgrounds are sort of, rooted in these sort of national intelligence, DoD areas. And I think we just did things differently, than you would see a typical storage company, which is probably born out of Silicon Valley. We just followed a different path. And, I think that, that also has kind of given us the opportunity, to really fine tune and hone what we were doing, in a way where now everything's sort of aligned between the market and the maturity of our product, and we've also seen a lot in the last decade or so, and so I think it's an exciting time for us.
I really appreciate you coming on. It sounds like a really interesting space to be in, and it sounds like you're solving some unique problems. So thanks so much for coming on, and excited to see where you guys go from here.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. This was a great, real treat. I appreciate being here.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments, and I would love for you to just click on that subscribe button, because that helps the channel a ton. And I will see you in the next one.